Emilio Ortega, and I will talk about Valent HPV vaccine against infection in intraepithelial neoplasia in women. We can talk about with definitions. Definition: Human papillomavirus are the group of viruses that are related to each other. They can cause wars in different parts of the body. There are more than 2,000 types, about 40 of them control the genitals. These are spread through sexual contact with an infected person. They can also be spread through other intimate skin-to-skin contact. Some of them can put you at a risk for a cancer.
Human papillomavirus is a virus which is a very common infection in the human population. The virus has over 100 different subtypes or strains, and these strains have particular predilection for infection in certain body areas. As it turns out, the anal genital tissues are susceptible to infection by about 40 types of the human papillomavirus. The biology that this virus has as far as its life cycle and its ability to replicate and carry out an infectious cycle has matched up very well with the opportunity to do so in the human population. And so it's taken advantage of a biological niche, and it carries out its life cycle very successfully.
In head and neck cancer, there are two main strains or types of HPV that cause tonsil and base of tongue cancer. They're type 16 and 18. A person could get infected with HPV virus 16 at, let's say, 16 years of age, and they could clear it by 18 years of age. But it's totally possible for them to get reinfected with a different strain of HPV. So I am asked at times if patients can get an HPV infection a second time. It's a little like getting the common cold in the sense that, it's affecting the same organ, in a common cold, your nose and your throat, but you're really getting a different virus every time. You're not getting a reinfection of the same virus.
Continue with application in medicine. The investigation of bivalent virus-like particle vaccine against human papillomavirus, including two HPV types in the quadrivalent HPV vaccines, 6, 11, 16, and 18, and 5 additional oncogenic types, 31, 33, 45, 52, and 58. Immunogenetic of the bivalent HPV is to find and prevent treatment.
How do you diagnose?
Okay, so what do all women go see their gynecologist
For their annual pap.
Exactly. It's about that pap smear. A lot of people think that's what it's all about. But yeah, the whole idea of the pap smear is to screen for cervical cancer.
Right.
We do pick up changes in the cells of the cervix called precancer. This is all caused by human papillomavirus.
Wow.
It's all about HPV. So we have different guidelines depending on your age. It's recommended 21 to start getting your pap smear.
At 21. But sometimes you get a pap and it can come back normal, but you may have HPV.
Correct. So what the pap smear is looking at in general for a lot of people is the cells of the cervix, but we do also have the ability to check for the presence of human papillomavirus within the pap smear.
Right.
In that young population, women in their 20s, we don't automatically go check for HPV. It's so common to have it. Right. So in that young population, to just go check for HPV when they have a good chance of clearing it, we kind of want to give them the benefit of the doubt. They say up to 80% of young sexually active women in their 20s are going to get HPV.
You're scaring me.
I know.
I mean, my kids have a long way to go, but still, that's a very scary statistic.
Yes, 80%.
Pros and cons. Pros. Nearly of 100% of participants in the protocol immunized and to prevent different types of cancer. Cons. The most common is pains, swellings, erythema, and prurito. And the most common systemic adverse are headaches, pyrexia, nausea, dizziness, and fatigue.
Will get a human papillomavirus at some point in their lives. Most will never know it because they'll show no symptoms.
If they develop a chronic viral infection of what we call high-risk HPV, then they will sometimes develop a cancer related to that virus. And that cancer typically occurs in their tonsil or base of tongue.
Dr. Eric Moore, a Mayo Clinic head and neck surgeon, says HPV-related throat cancer is becoming more common. This year, 20,000 people will be diagnosed. Next year, an estimated 22 or 23,000. Dr. Moore says the good news is that the cancer is fairly easy to treat, usually with robotic surgery like this to remove the tonsils. But he hopes more people getting the HPV vaccine will help lower the number of cases in the future.
This is a tumor that's still increasing in incidence, but we see hope on the horizon that increased vaccination will then start a downward trend in the number of these cancers that we see.
For the Mayo Clinic News Network, I'm Ian Roth.
Jesus applied in Ecuador. In our country, there are two main vaccines against HPV, the Gardasil and the Cervarix. They provide protection against this type of 16 and 18. We are the type that cause of the 70% of cervical cancer cases. The vaccines are administered in series of 3 applications.
It's very important that screening is done. It's very important that we try to prevent cancers or treat cancers early in any of those people that do develop the cancer from an HPV positive infection. But I also want people to understand HPV is really common. And that just because you are HPV positive does not mean you're going to get cancer. It does mean you have to see your doctor. It does mean that you have to get screened. It does mean that you have to be really conscious of symptoms that are related to cancer.
So for women, there's a simple test which is able to identify human papillomavirus. It's incorporated into the way a pap smear is done, where scrapings from the cervix are submitted to the lab. And at the same time, the pap smear is done, which means the cells in the sample are looked at under a microscope. Part of the sample is analyzed molecularly, and the presence of the virus can be definitively detected. In men, HPV testing is done on a research basis, and in some instances, it's done to determine whether a particular type of cancer has HPV, but routine testing or screening for HPV has not yet been identified as a useful practice for men. For women whose partners have been diagnosed with a HPV positive head and neck cancer, I feel it's important for them to ensure that they have appropriate cervical screening to be confident that the HPV strains that are potentially within their relationship and shared between the two partners are not causing a problem related to the development of genital cancers for the female in the relationship. There are no treatments for human papillomavirus infection at this point. We use HPV testing as a way of assessing a person's risk of having cancers in areas that are susceptible to human papillomavirus infection.
Conclusion. The naive HPV vaccine prevented infections and disease related to HPV 31, 33, 45, 52, and 58 in a susceptible population and generating an antibody response to HPV 6, 11, 16, and 18 that was non-inferior to that generated by the key HPV vaccine. The night B HPV vaccine did not prevent infection and disease related to HPV types beyond the 9 types covered by the vaccine.
Protects us against germs that can make us unwell. It makes special blood cells and antibodies which help to do this. The first time your body meets a new germ, your body may not be very good at fighting it. That's because it takes time to make the blood cells and antibodies required to fight off the new germ. It's during this time that the germs can sometimes make you unwell. But a healthy immune system will eventually make the blood cells and antibodies that fight off the germs. Once your immune system has encountered a germ, it doesn't forget. The next time the same germ enters your body, your immune system is able to respond more quickly, destroying the germs before you become unwell. This is called immunity, and that's what the immunization is all about. HPV immunization works by making your body remember the most common kinds of HPV that can cause cervical cancer and genital warts. The HPV vaccine contains little particles that look the same as some of the particles on the outside of the real virus. Because they are only particles, not the actual virus, you can't get HPV from having the injections. They'll just trigger your immune system so you can fight the HPV virus if you need to in the future.
Thank you for your attention.